Good evening. Welcome to KPDSB's live session where we'll focus on using the synchronous platforms, Zoom and Google Meet. My name is Lindy Henderson. I'm an intermediate teacher at Beaver Brae School in Kenora, and I'll be facilitating the session today. This information session is being streamed on YouTube and can be found later on KPDSB's YouTube channel. A back channel will be set up for you during this discussion. Should you have any questions, feel free to email and we can answer those questions live as we go at distancelearning@kpdsb.ca. So it's distancelearning@kpdsb.ca. I'd like to introduce our presenters today. Sylvia McPhee will walk us through an introduction to Zoom and share how she uses it with her grade 2-3 class at Red Lake Matson. Josh Miles, a teacher from Red Lake, will give us an overview of Google Meet, the platform we're using here today, and share with us how he's using it with his classes at Red Lake District High School. Along with Sylvia, you can see here today, we have Jason McDonald, who is an administrator with KPDSB, Lex McEachern and Grant Shelsky, who will also be moderating with us. I'm just going to share my screen. Sylvia, are you ready to get started?
I am, Lindy. Thank you. Just wait for the screen to pop up. And
okay.
And there. Okay, I'd like to thank the team for giving me the opportunity to share. As Lindy said, I teach grade 2-3 at Red Lake Matson School. So the children I work with are pretty young, but it's incredible what they can learn, and it's incredible to have watched the learning process that they have gone through, the families have gone through, and I have gone through myself. What I'd like to do tonight is just take you through a Coles Notes version of Zoom and how I explained it to my class on our very first day. So before we even started, I sent an email to the families, parents, and I gave them a meeting name, a meeting number, and a personal ID number, or a nickname as some people call it. And parents had to download the program onto whatever device they were using, and then they would type in the meeting number and the ID number. One of the great features about Zoom is I have a personal classroom, if you want to call it that, and we have the same ID number and personal ID number every single time. So it's quite easy for people to get in and out on a daily basis. And we Zoom twice a day, quite regularly. We can also send a reminder email to families, and it just pops up on either Outlook or Google or whatever other email they may have. So moving on, we have a waiting room. Once the people have joined into the meeting, they've put in their numbers and they've clicked join. You'll see the screen on the left, or the button on the left has a no, sorry, it's the one in the middle, meeting options I'm chatting about. There's a blue check mark there that says enable waiting room. And as the host, I ask people to wait until I am sure that it is the right people that I want to be coming into the meeting. So people's names show up on my end. I say, Lindy wants to join. I know Lindy. And so I will click her in and she's in the meeting. When Lindy is in the meeting, you'll see the bar on the bottom, and that's our toolbar. So the first option that we'll talk about is joining with audio. For most of our students, the audio was not an issue. They can just join in with their computers. Some were on tablets. We did have one person on a phone, and the options are there for people to join in different ways. Video, there's also a mute button that I went through with the students. That was number one, actually. because you can imagine 20 children all talking at the same time. I had to teach them how to press mute so that I wouldn't hear the background noise of their families, going through their daily routine or other conversations. And then when it was the child's turn to talk, they just pressed unmute. And the nice thing about Zoom is that I can also control this. If there were children talking about things that were not school related, I can press mute on the child so that everyone else doesn't have to hear it. Video is very similar. It's usually an integrated webcam. We haven't had any issues, but there are different settings that people can play around with. There's a virtual background, which is kind of nice. I've played with it a few times. I've seen Northern Lights. So I click the button and I can choose. It's kind of like a page when you open up your computer, your backdrop. So there's Grant is showing it, thank you. Northern Lights, palm trees, whatever. And the nice thing about that is if I don't want people to see in my house, to see where I'm living or what's going on behind me, I can just put on a virtual background. So that's a really good feature for safety as well. We're not looking in people's homes. Security. So there's a security button, which I'm kind of talking about as we go. I've talked about the waiting room, the audio, the video options. I can also lock the meeting if you see at the very top. So once everybody in my class is in, I have the control to lock that so that nobody else joins us and nobody else that we don't know or we don't want. The waiting room we've chatted about. Going down to chat back in that waiting room or in the security feature, if we open that button up, the participants can talk to one another without actually speaking. So they're typing out their questions or their responses. If they don't want to interrupt the teacher, for example, they can just say, "Hey, Mrs. Henderson, I didn't understand your last point." And then someone else is usually kind enough to answer. This can be controlled privately, that it's going right only to the presenter or the teacher, or it can be opened up to the whole class. So the options are good, and the presenter, the teacher, can control that. There is another option that my students really, really enjoy, the reactions. And actually, they found this one on their own before I even knew about it. So that was great. There's a thumbs up, there's a clapping. So if I have 20 students on at one time and I'm not sure that they all understand what I've said, I can just say, "Give me a thumbs up," and they'll do that, and I could see 20 thumbs up, rather than listening to 20 children trying to speak at once or get their point across. So that is really good. It's something that we use regularly. I chose Zoom because it was recommended to me by people in our community. I knew a group that was using it regularly for a community event. Some colleagues highly recommended it for this age group. And parents, the families in my classroom, some of them had used it. They were really good in helping each other out. Some of them are on iPads and tablets, different pieces of technology, and it's all helpful. So they help each other out, and it's been great. The last thing I want to mention is there's a feature on there that says end call. And as a teacher, I really like that one, because some of my students like to keep chatting with each other at the end. And I'm not comfortable with the idea of being on there on the Zoom session without me. So I can just press end call for all, and then it's finished for everyone. And that's it in a nutshell. There are obviously other features, but that puts us online every day, twice a day, and we do all of our learning, and the kids are learning, I'm learning. It's been working very well. So if you have any questions, you can ask at the end. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. I really appreciate how you're able to communicate how you've been able to learn it along with your students, especially as we kind of just dove into this distance learning. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Let's move right on, if you're good with that, Josh, and you can talk to us about Google Meet.
Yes, thank you, Lindy. Google Meet is a program that I use with my high school students. It's great for them because they're used to dealing with the Google programs in their account through KPDSB. So what I'm going to do in order to give you a better understanding of how the program works is actually utilize one of the features, which is to present. So you just saw a portion of it there. And so I'm going to present, and I'm going to take you basically right to the very beginning of what it would look like if you're going to use Meet through the Chrome browser. So what I would do is I would just type in meet.google.com. What I do with my class is I schedule the meeting, but through my Google Calendar, and it provides a unique link that I provide to them. But I can also access any class with a nickname. So for this case, we'll just create a hopefully unique nickname that will take us within, this is the lobby, so to speak. There is no waiting room with Google Meet, but this does allow you to see your camera, make sure your audio is on or muted, and it also shows if anybody else is in the call. So I see here that no one else is in here. Sometimes if a kid or a student, accesses a class and no one's in there, maybe that's an indication that they have chosen the wrong class or typed it in wrong. So I can join that now, but I'm going to switch back to our main tab here to continue the presentation. So accessing the Meet can be done with a nickname. Like I said, I can schedule it within the Google Calendar, and it can also be linked within the classroom, and students can access the Meet through the browser, through the Chrome browser, through the Google Meet app on supported devices, and also on their phone. Some of the features, down here on the bottom left, we have our class information. Now within the class information, we can see our nickname, which is only able to be used in the KP board. So that's a little bit of a security feature in terms of having people jumping in on the class. It also has the info down here that you can send to anyone that you may be having in as a guest presenter. There's also an attachments feature. If you do attach something within the Google Calendar event, it'll show up here. So maybe you're putting this out, an assignment or a document out to the kids during your class.
Josh, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm just looking, and I think it looks like we're still sharing the previous tab with the Google Meet example, where you logged into KPDSB 2020. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Weird. All right, I'll just stop presenting here quickly and start again.
And then when you do, if you just go share full screen, we should be able to see it all.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. All righty. So I'll let it load up here quickly.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's working?
Yep.
All right. So what I was mentioning before is just down at the bottom left, we have our information. We have a nickname that is secure to the school or the school board, information on how to share this link with other people outside of the board, and also an attachment section to put any documents we would like to use. At the bottom of the screen, we have our mute and unmute button, our leave call button, and also our camera toggle to turn our camera on and off. We have an option to utilize captions and also the present button. I'm currently presenting. I can stop presenting. The options for presenting are your entire screen, a window, or just a simple tab, which kind of helps with clutter, depending on how many things you have open. For further options, we do have the option to record a meeting, so we would allow the students to be told that they're being recorded. These can be stored on the Google Drive or Classroom for further use. We can change the layout. make it full screen. Again, the captions button. There's further audio and video settings, and we can also use a phone for audio. You're able to report a problem, report abuse, and there's also a help function. At the top right, we have our grid view that I'll get into in a second, but we first have our participants. So the people within the group, so you can see, I don't have the ability to kick anyone out or mute them, as I'm not leading this, but in my own class I would. We're able to hide the video, mute them, or take them out of the class. We can also add people over email or through phone. The chat feature does not have a private function, but this can be used for any quick questions or to put out links to the students. Diving a little bit further into some other extensions that we can use. At the top left, we have the nod extension, which allows students to put in quick emojis. This kind of allows them to demonstrate understanding, or is a quick way for them to, just like Grant is showing us, to allow you to know that they are understanding what you're talking about. If there's any audio issues, this is a way that a student can demonstrate that they've heard what you're saying as well, or if they can't do that orally. The hand raise is also a neat function that can be used. I'll click it right there. So this allows me to see that a student has raised their hand, and it'll stay there until I click it away. So if a student has a question and they don't have to unmute and interrupt, they can raise their hand just like a class, and I can get to them. There is also options that allow the skin color change for the emojis, and I can choose to show my last name or not. There's also notifications, so if I cannot see the hand being raised, I will get a notification. The grid view extension is at the top right here. This allows different formation of the screen. So if I want to see every single student in the class on one screen, I can do that. It also allows me to show the participants with video, highlight any speakers, and I can include myself in the grid as well. Additional extensions that I haven't shown here are the push to talk. The push to talk extension essentially turns your space bar into the push to talk feature on a walkie-talkie. So if I was wanting to unmute, I would just hold down the space bar and say what I needed to say. This eliminates the need to continually unmute and mute, and it also limits the unwanted noise in the background before a student's able to mute their microphone again. Going back to the top right here, it doesn't have the option right now, but Google Attendant or Meet Attendance allows me to take attendance at any point during the presentation or the class. So at the beginning of class, there may be a set number of students there. Some may come in late, some may come in a little bit late, and some may leave the class. So by taking attendance, one-click attendance at different points during the class, I'm able to see who was in the class at different times. And that information is sent directly to a spreadsheet within my Google Drive. The use of breakout rooms is not a feature that's readily available in Google Meet, but it is easily bypassed by creating multiple Google Meet rooms. So to do that, I would just open up a new tab like I had done before. I would put in a unique nickname, and those nicknames I would use in a collaborative document to assign students. So if students would receive a link to a collaborative Google slide, for instance, and within that slide, they would have a list of their names and what room they were to go to. They would access that room with that unique nickname, and within that room, they would be able to have those small group discussions, do those small group tasks. It can also be used for team teaching scenarios and one-on-one conferencing outside of the main room. Cameras and microphones are separate within each room that's open. So if a student is in the main room as well as the breakout room, they just need to mute their mic or turn off their camera in the main room. They can unmute and turn on their camera in the breakout room and speak and be seen. So that's just an overview of Google Meet. It works well with my class. As I said, a lot of the students are used to the Google community and using the apps, and it's worked out quite well so far. So I'm hoping we can continue.
Thanks so much for that, Josh. I really appreciate how you're able to share how you're using it. There, as you can see, in both platforms, there are so many features, and we're all learning, right? In fact, Josh, you mentioned that, was it earlier today, that there was an extension that you had just fallen upon, and so we're all figuring things out together, and I love that the platforms are evolving to meet our needs as well. We'd like to move on to some frequently asked questions, if this is a good time to do so. Jason, maybe what I'll do is I'll share my screen, or would you like to share yours? I'll share. And
I'm good. That sounds great.
Okay. We've got some questions that have been shared with us through a couple different ways. Previously with parent surveys. Again, we have the back channel open, and it's distance learning at kpdsb.ca. And we'll start with some questions that we already have ready to go. Just share that up there.
Thanks, Lindy. Yeah, so we've gathered some commonly asked questions about as we're sharing with staff, and in this case now with parents, looking at some of the commonly asked questions to try to give a little bit of that information up front along with the presentation, so that it's not leaving people kind of wondering after the fact. So here are a few, and I'll throw some of these questions out to our team here, and they'll share a little bit of information about these. So first one is, can my child's Zoom or Google Meet session be recorded?
Oh, that's a good question. So Josh mentioned this in his discussion. Educators can choose to record a session with both Zoom and Google Meet. Usually we're in the practice that we will ask permission or give the heads up. Just as this session's being recorded, it's a very easy thing to do. And then they would not be shared outside in general terms. They shouldn't be shared outside of the students or classroom's learning management system, or LMS. So I'll give an example of that from my own context. My students meet with me twice a week for half an hour. And if I know that there's going to be a component of a lesson or instruction where not all students can be present, I will record it and put it into our Google Classroom.
Thank you, Lindy. The next question is, as the parent, can I attend my child's learning session?
Yeah, we kind of use our synchronous learning opportunities to replace what's going on in a classroom. So certainly, Sylvia was mentioning that sometimes her students' parents are helping get set up, and they may be around the lesson at the time. My students' families are always in the background doing things. So in that way, family members and parents are involved in the students' learning. But we generally send the invitations in some manner to the students themselves.
And I know we've been so grateful for all of the support that we've had from parents through this learning from a distance experience. So that's a nice way to build that in. Thank you. What other apps are used along with Google Meet?
I think Josh did a really good job mentioning those. Some of those apps would include the attendance app that we're using, the grid view. Josh, was there anything else that you would add to that?
The nod, push to talk. There's a lot of apps that have been created that aren't accessible for our board due to safety reasons and security. But those are the ones that I'm currently using or playing around with. And I think they're pretty frequently used across all Meet users in the board.
Awesome.
The other app that integrates with Google Meet is it syncs right in with your Google Classroom. as well as it can be instantly scheduled through your Google Calendar.
Yeah, if I can jump in. I'm not sure if this would actually classify as an app, but in Zoom, there is also an interactive whiteboard that I am really starting to try to use now. And the students they're writing, they're drawing, they're putting stamps on it at the same time I am. So today we did a multiplication and division lesson, and they were moving around the objects on the page to put them in different groups. So it was an awesome feature that they were doing at the same time as I was doing. We're trying to learn that one a lot better. It's coming.
It's so good, isn't it, Sylvia? So that you can do some of the things that you would normally be doing face to face, but being able to use Zoom to do that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. Next one is, can I use Zoom or Google Meet without Wi-Fi?
And there's a couple ways to answer that question. So first off, yes, you can. You can either use your data from your cell phone and use it as a personal hotspot to access both Zoom and Google Meet. You can also have the option to call in to Zoom and to Google Meets, which gives you an option to the phone. Unfortunately, through Zoom, some long distance charges may apply, where Google Meet has a nice option in that you can actually be called through a landline phone or through a cell phone directly from within the application to avoid any additional charges.
That's great. Thank you, Grant. Can I use, and Sylvia, I think you touched on this when you were talking about Zoom. Can I use Google Meet or Zoom on my iPad?
I've had students using a Mac. Well, let me think. We have a MacBook, we have an iPad, we have a tablet, a Galaxy Pad. Not even sure what that really is. We even had someone working off of their cell phone. And then I have my board issued computer. So it all works. It all works at the same time. It took a little bit of some bumps along the way, a little bit of a journey, but parents were awesome at helping each other, work with their different devices, and everyone has it figured out. So we're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, the nice thing about both Zoom and Meet is they work universally across devices. So there are app versions for both of them, as well as web-based versions, so that they work synonymously with whatever type of device you're using. And the nice thing about it is that it allows for multiple ways of working within your classroom.
Awesome.
Does Google Meet use assistive technology?
Google Meet, as Josh had mentioned, has a closed captioning feature, which is really nice to turn on. It's very easy to use. It uses predictive technology to analyze what is being said on each talking head, essentially.
Thank you, Grant. Can my child change their username?
This is also a question that I think both Sylvia and Josh kind of touched on. In Zoom, you can have the ability to change your name. However, the runner of the Zoom has the ability to turn that option off. So if you want to make sure that everything is appropriate, you can make it so it's set up as whatever the name is for the login. For Google Meet, because we're logging in through K-12 accounts, the name is referenced off of what that name is. Josh showed earlier that you can take it so you can be just set to a first name versus a first and last name basis. But other than that, that is how names can change within both of these call systems.
Thanks, Grant. And I believe we touched on this one with both previously. Can my child change their video background? Sylvia, you talked a little bit about with Zoom being able to make those changes, and Josh, we mentioned that we're not able to do that directly in Zoom or in Google Meet, correct?
No, you can't change the video background. Essentially, you can put whatever you want behind you, but there's no virtual background, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Next one is, what can I do to improve the audio and video quality?
I like this question. We get asked this question quite a bit. Unfortunately, we live where we live, and sometimes there are hiccups. I had my own hiccup with my Wi-Fi this morning for the first time. But some of the things that my students and families have found are useful is to, if you're using video and audio and your sound isn't working great, sometimes my students find turning off their video helps to stream it a little bit better. And a good practice, as Sylvia mentioned, and I think Josh alluded to as well, is having other people mute their mics when they aren't being used. Just eliminates the background. I also have my students, I encourage them to use headphones if they have the option, just because it kind of makes the sound a little bit more clearer.
Thanks, Lindy. And lastly, now you guys did a wonderful job of sharing information with parents, but as we're working through, sometimes we're going to run into little hiccups along the way. Who should I ask for help on using Zoom?
Well, our joke is that if it's Googleable, anybody can problem solve, right? And I think that our teachers and our families and students have done such a great job problem solving on their own. But as a parent, I would very much recommend that our teachers, our child's educators, the educator team, whether that's teachers or education assistants, the EAs, the teachers of the classroom are really good first point of contact, I think, for anything that we're doing with individual classes.
Thank you very much. So, we mentioned those were questions that have come up, but I have no doubt that there are other questions that parents may have regarding the use of Zoom or Google Meet. And again, distancelearning@kpdsb.ca. Feel free to throw us an email, and we'll do our best to help you out with that. Thank you.
One more thing that I've been asked to just share quickly here. We do have guidelines that we ask our students and our staff to follow, which are available on a supporting distance learning website. So I'm just going to bring those up quickly just to show you. And this is the protocols that all teachers have been following within holding video meetings with their students. So just hold on, give me 1 second here. So these are the guidelines in which we have been following with our students and as well as staff have been using to ensure student safety, and that we are all working within a safe and organized manner. Everything here has been put together from a group and collaborative board to making sure that we are ensuring student safety no matter what we're doing while operating online. So if you have further questions about that, this is available online for any parent to view.
Thanks for that, Grant. And if we don't have any other questions that are coming in from the back channel right now, as Jason mentioned, the email contact is always available at distancelearning@kpdsb.ca. And I want to give an extra big thank you to Sylvia and Josh for taking some time today to share some of the great things that are happening with in their virtual classroom. So we're definitely giving you, if I had my tool open, I'd be giving you that virtual hand clap and thumbs up as well. Thank you so much. And that concludes our session for this evening.
Thanks, Lindy, and to the team. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Much appreciated.
Have a wonderful evening.